Hello and welcome to this high-level A2.1 video on the fascinating origins of cells. To truly grasp how life began, we first need to understand how the complex molecules that form cells, like proteins and nucleic acids, came into existence. This journey takes us back in time to prebiotic Earth, a period before life as we know it existed. This early Earth was vastly different from today. Very little oxygen, abundant methane and carbon dioxide, intense heat, no protective atmosphere against harsh UV radiation, and frequent lightning. These conditions remarkably were perfect for the spontaneous generation of complex carbon compounds. Once life emerged, it began to change the Earth's environment, producing oxygen and forming the ozone layer, meaning those initial conditions for spontaneous generation no longer exist. But let's delve into how it might have first happened. Before we explore the first cells, let's establish a clear understanding of what a cell is. A cell is a fundamentally self-sustaining, meaning it actively uses energy to maintain its highly ordered state, preventing breakdown. This highly ordered state can also be passed on to offspring, a unique quality of living things. Organisms can be unicellular or multicellular. While we recognize all organisms as living, how do we know their smaller components, like cells, are also alive, especially in multicellular organisms? We have compelling evidence. Firstly, cells use energy to maintain order and compartmentalization. When they cease, they die. Secondly, new cells produce more cells. Finally, cells can live outside the body. Your cells, if provided with nutrients in culture, can continue to live. This is not true for smaller cellular components like organelles, which cannot survive independently. This leads us to the conclusion that the cell is the basic unit of life. The concept of spontaneous generation has been mentioned. Historically, it was believed that living things could just appear from non-living matter. For example, that mice could spontaneously generate from dirty laundry. Louis Pasteur's famous experiments definitively falsified this idea. His work proved that new cells only arise from existing cells. While this was a monumental discovery, it still left the question of where the very first cell came from unanswered. So, if we envision this very first cell, what feature must it have possessed to form? It needed some form of control over chemical reactions, implying an early form of metabolism to regulate what reactions occurred. There also needed to be self-assembly of polymers, the ability to link amino acids into proteins or nucleotides into DNA. Crucially, it had to be compartmentalized, separating itself from the external environment. And finally, it required self-replicating molecules. All these elements had to converge for that first cell to emerge. Now, how could these complex polymers, like amino acids or even proteins, have spontaneously formed? The Miller-Urey experiment aimed to answer this, providing crucial support for the hypothesis of the very first cells. Their apparatus recreated the conditions of prebiotic Earth. Water vapor, ammonia, methane, and hydrogen were combined in a chamber. Energy, mimicking lightning strikes or volcanic eruptions was then applied. Samples were collected and remarkably, the process produced amino acids. At the time, it was widely believed that only living things could produce such compounds. Miller-Urey demonstrated that carbon compounds could arise on Earth before life evolved, due to the unique conditions of the prebiotic Earth. This provided strong evidence that these components could have originated independently of a living cell. However, as Earth's conditions changed once cells formed, this spontaneous process was no longer possible. Compartmentalization was essential for the first cell's formation, allowing it to separate from its environment. This was achieved through the formation of vesicles, structures surrounded by membranes. In the primordial soup of prebiotic Earth, phospholipids were abundant. These remarkable molecules have both a hydrophilic, water-loving, and hydrophobic, water-hating end. When present in sufficient quantities, they spontaneously form bilayers. Two layers because their hydrophobic tails cluster together to avoid water, which surrounds both the inside and outside of a vesicle. This spontaneous assembly of phospholipid bilayers created the compartmentalized regions necessary for the first cell. An added advantage is that these phospholipid bilayers are partially or semi-permeable, meaning they selectively control what enters and what exits the cell, another crucial feature for the origin of life. While all living things on Earth today use DNA as their genetic material, it is widely presumed that RNA was the first genetic material in that initial cell. Several lines of evidence support this RNA world hypothesis. Firstly, RNA is self-replicating, a key requirement for the self-replicating molecules of the first cell. Secondly, it can act as its own catalyst, meaning it doesn't always need an enzyme to initiate replication. Finally, some viruses, though not living organisms themselves, have only RNA, and the way this RNA functions within them suggests its capacity for functions necessary for the first cell. Interestingly, RNA mutates at a much higher rate than DNA because it lacks a complementary strength for proofreading. This higher mutation rate would have driven genetic variation in early populations, accelerating evolution after the first cell formed. Consider three seemingly disparate organisms: a tree, a dog, and a horse. Despite their difference, they share remarkable similarities in their cellular and molecular workings, particularly their DNA. This indicates a shared common ancestor. Tracing back far enough, we can find common ancestral links between all organisms on Earth, even bacteria. This leads us to the concept of LUCA, the last universal common ancestor. LUCA represents the single common ancestor from which all life forms that have ever existed on Earth are descended. The universality of our genetic code, the fact that all organisms use DNA and it functions in the same way, is best explained by a common ancestor. Similarities in ribosome structure and the synthesis of DNA and RNA also point to this shared origin. While life might have evolved multiple times initially, it's thought that only the lineage from LUCA survived and diversified into all current life forms. This concept beautifully illustrates the theme of unity and diversity in biology. A natural question arises: when did Luca emerge on Earth? Two primary techniques help us estimate this, often yielding different answers, a common occurrence in biology. One method is carbon dating, which uses the known half-lives of carbon isotopes. By analyzing carbon remaining in fossils, we can backtrack to determine how much time was passed. Some fascinating fossils from the Strelay pool, dating back about 3.42 billion years, show early signs of life. While older rocks and fossils exist, they don't necessarily contain older life forms due to geological cycles. By carbon dating fragments from sedimentary rocks, it's estimated that life arose approximately 4.1 billion years ago. In contrast, another method relies on comparing genomic differences between organisms, leveraging the idea of a molecular clock. A dog and a horse, being more closely related, share more genes and base sequences than, say, a horse and a tree. This is driven by mutations. The further back in time we go to find a common ancestor, the more genetic differences we expect. We can quantify these genomic differences between various organisms and often observe a predictable pattern. Algorithms can be developed to correlate the number of genetic differences with the time elapsed since a common ancestor. Applying this to Luca, the data suggests that Luca formed around 4.5 billion years ago. This is close to the estimated time of Earth's formation, implying a relatively short prebiotic period. It is important to remember that these timelines are estimations and are only falsifiable. Both carbon dating and genomic differences have their merits, and neither can be definitely proven. While the exact when of Luca's origin remains debated, we have a strong hypothesis for where. The beauty of common ancestry lies in the shared genes among all current living species. Many of these shared genes code for proteins enabling survival in extreme environments like anaerobic conditions or those rich in hydrogen, carbon dioxide, or iron. If all organisms, even those not living in such places today, possess these genes, the most logical explanation is that they inherited them from their common ancestor. This suggests Luca likely arose in an environment with these conditions. One compelling candidate is deep sea hydrothermal vents, specifically white smokers. These underwater structures provide minerals and temperatures that could have led to the spontaneous generation of carbon-based life forms, aligning perfectly with the genetic evidence we see across all life today. This provides powerful support for the origin of Luca in such a unique environment. Today we explored how the oxygen-free extreme conditions of prebiotic Earth facilitated the formation of organic molecules, a crucial first step given that, as cell theory states, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. We then delved into the requirements for the first cell, including metabolism, self-replication of RNA, and compartmentalization via vesicles supported by the Miller-Urey experiment's demonstration of abiotic synthesis. The RNA world hypothesis suggests RNA, with its unique properties, was the initial genetic material. Finally, we learned about Luca, the last universal common ancestor whose shared characteristics point to an origin near hydrothermal vents, with its emergence dated through fossil evidence and molecular clock data. Today, we explored how prebiotic Earth harsh conditions enable organic molecule formation, defying the cell theory usual rule that cells come from cells. We covered the requirements for the first cell: metabolism, self-replicating RNA, and compartmentalization, and saw how the Miller-Urey experiment supported abiotic synthesis. The RNA world hypothesis places RNA as the initial genetic material. We then discussed LUCA, likely originating near hydrothermal vents, with its age estimated through fossils and molecular clock. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.